Morning everyone. So I'm currently sort of perched in my polytunnel at the moment. Today I am going to do some autumn sowing. One of the things I want to get better at is sort of having more flowers on my allotment. I've always been quite vegetable dominated, but over the sort of summer I've been looking at other people's allotments and watching them bring home the most amazing sort of bouquet of cut flowers, and I thought I'm going to give that a go. So things that you can sow in autumn tend to be your hardy annuals, some biennials and some perennials. Today I'm going to be mainly doing sort of hardy annuals. So hardy annuals are typically frost hardy down to about -5 degrees Celsius, which is 23 Fahrenheit. So even in zone 8 there is a risk that we will drop down to those sort of temperatures here. I will give them the best chance possible. I will keep them in my polytunnel. And what I will do is I have these this sort of IKEA metal shelving unit that's got a cover with it. I'll pop a photo somewhere down here so you can see what I'm using. And then they've got two choices: get busy living or get busy dying. I will not be running up here with horticultural fleece at the slightest sign of a frost, and they will certainly not be coming into my house. So the benefits of autumn sowing are that you have the chance of earlier flowers next year. The risks are obviously that you'll lose them over winter, but then you've always got the chance to sort of sow again in spring, which is something I will do anyway to try and prolong the flowering sort of season. So I know we are all desperately trying to reduce our sort of plastic usage, and yes, as much as possible I do, but another alternative for me is trying to make sure I buy trays and pots that are going to last me a long time, rather than those really flimsy sort of trays that you can get. I tend to like to buy things that are moulded plastic and quite rigid. So I know you can get these sizes. This size comes with a propagator, and it has actually got a lid to it. I haven't got any to hand, but they do come with lids. So I know a lot of people use this sort of size. My preferred is actually the next size up. These are half size trays. You can get propagator lids for these. I've got one of those. I'll show you that in a minute. And then the other thing that I will use is these sort of very rigid sort of module cells. These are from Container Wise. These are actually the Charles Dowding range ones. Not sponsored, not gifted, paid for, but they also do them in lots and lots of different sizes, and I actually have quite a few of their trays because, as I say, I like the fact that they're quite rigid, quite robust, and they're going to last years. You know, some of these, I believe this one's newer, but some of these I've had as long as I've had my allotment. So yeah, when it comes to sowing depth, make sure you check your seed packets. A lot of them will say, but some of them won't, and the general rule of thumb I use is the bigger the seed, the deeper I plant it. So if it's a really fine seed, then I will cover it with just a very thin layer of compost, where if it's a slightly bigger seed, then I will plant it slightly deeper. Some people say 3 times the seed's depth. I'm not quite that rigid, but yeah, that's a rule of thumb to go by. Compost wise, I'm actually going to be using, if I can lift it, the Dalefoot seedling compost. It's a peat-free wool-based compost. You don't particularly need to use seedling compost. That's just have to be what they had. I'm trying to be much better at using only peat-free, but what I am finding is not all peat-free composts are created equal. So if anyone's got any recommendations of a good peat-free compost, please let me know. I can't comment on the Dalefoot yet. This is literally my first time using it, so yeah, who knows, but hopefully it will be successful. So in terms of seeds I'm sowing today, I'm going to be sowing some larkspur, some Ami, which for cut flowers is quite good sort of filler flower, so you've got something a little bit different in there rather than just all big blooms. I'm also going to be growing some stocks, and then I've got 2 different types of cornflowers, some hollyhocks. My neighbours grew those hollyhocks last year, and they looked at my plot neighbours, and they looked absolutely stunning. So yeah, we're going to give those a go this year. And I'm also going to be growing some calendula. Finally, I am going to be growing some straw flowers, which are a bit of a risk because they're not actually fully hardy, but I tried sowing these in spring this year and had very little success. I think the heat sort of got to them when they were really young, and I was really struggling to keep them watered. So yeah, we're going to try sowing them in the autumn. The worst that can happen is nothing happens, so I'm not too worried. So yes, I believe perennial wise things like lupins you can sow at this time of year. The sort of things you want to stay away from are definitely things like cosmos and sunflowers. Cosmos will shrivel up, turn black and die at the slightest cold. I don't tend to use much in the way of propagator lids. As I've already said, I will bring my covered shelving unit inside the polytunnel and grow them in there. I may need to put some of these on before winter because the aim is that they're going into winter as small plants rather than as tiny seedlings. The only exception is I will use a propagator for the calendula. What I have learned is that mice love calendula, and they will come along and they will dig up your seeds. Once they're up, they tend to lose interest in them fairly quickly. It's the seeds they want rather than the plants. So yeah, I will be making sure that I cover those in with a propagator lid for protection from rodents rather than protection from the elements. But yeah, they're the only ones that I'm going to be too worried about covering. So I'm not going to talk you through the entire process, but this is a tray that I filled with some compost with a trusty pen. I'm going to pop a few holes in it. And now this is the calendula. So because they're slightly bigger seeds, I'm actually sowing these in the module cells because they're you can actually handle them. And what it will save me is sort of having to prick them out later, where when I've sown them in seed trays, so they will need pricking out and potting on into either module cells or small pots. I will probably do module cells. So very simply, I'm going to drop two, on the floor apparently, into each little module, and then I can take out the weaker of the two seedlings. Oh, apparently I'm going to go one in there when they start to germinate. And I'm going to cover with some rather chunky compost apparently. I do not sieve. There is not enough time in my life to worry about sieving. And then, as I said, these are the calendula, which, as I've said, tend to be a favourite of mice. So these are going to live in this. So I'm just going to pop them in there, and they are going to live in this trusty little propagator. So not so much for temperature, but to protect them from the mice. So seed storage wise, I'm always looking for new ideas, but at the moment I'm using, you've probably seen this if you're on Instagram or follow other people on Facebook, I'm using the photo storage boxes, which actually looks like this. It works really well for me, and I've got them sort of broken down into groupings, so sort of beetroot bulb forming, sweet corn courgettes, then I've got alliums, brassicas, so I have mine broken down like that. What I am finding is that seed buying and gardening are two very different hobbies, and I seem to love both equally. And I'm running out of room rapidly, so I've actually ordered myself a second one, because in here I also have other flowers, cut flowers, sweet peas and cosmos. I think they're the only flowery ones I've got, which are fit to burst. So my plan is to have one for my vegetable seeds so I can space them out a little bit more, and another one for my flower seeds. I think with my flower seeds I'm going to go A to Z. I think that's probably the easiest way I can think of doing it. Any other suggestions will be gratefully received. But yes, that's what I use for my seed storage. So that's that job done. Other things I'll be sowing this month are things like lettuce, pak choy and spring onions. I think that's about everything. Moving on into October, things I will be looking at sowing are things like broad beans. I'll also sow my sweet peas, but I will sow both of them at home due to the mice. Then I will also be planting out my garlic. Traditionally they say winter solstice, but around about the end of October for me. So yeah, that's kind of my autumn sowing. you know, give it a go if you fancy it. If not, you've always got spring, but there's plenty of time still to get some of these things into trays. You can also have a go at sowing where you grow, which is just where you sort of broadcast and yeah, and see what you get. I do prefer the control of sowing in seedlings, but that's just my sort of nature. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully I will see you again soon. Bye.